Yes. Chitrakshi, are we ready?
Wait 1 minute, it is uploading. Wait, just so we can start.
Okay.
Chitrashi, recording.
Your recording is in progress.
Have you invited the public in?
Sir?
Have the people joined?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, then let's start. Is it okay starting?
Yes.
Okay, I think friends and colleagues. Let me welcome you to the 103rd episode of INHAF's webinar series on the Rethinking City. In fact, today is the third webinar on the new 10-episode series that we have started. And this entire series of 10 episodes is examining climate change in the context of cities, the urban world, and climate change. And today, the topic is urban flooding and extreme rainfall is the today's topic. This series, in a manner of speaking, is a slight departure from what we have been doing for the last 3 years. Almost 100 webinars that we've done, essentially on a very broad theme, urbanization and cities, and of course the urban challenge. This one is slightly more specific and tied to a project that we are doing in Chennai. This particular project is called Climact Chennai. Climact Chennai. And I should tell you briefly about this project because we're trying to use this opportunity of webinars to talk to people, to understand them, to invite them to kind of participate and strengthen the whole effort. So this project is meant to understand, report, and contribute to how Chennai is preparing to meet its climate challenge. Chennai is a coastal city and a city that is likely to be impacted by climate change that is coming. And idea is to understand how is city preparing to meet its climate challenge. In fact, trying to understand who is doing what is government doing, the state government, the national government, the city government, the municipal corporations, what are development corporation doing, what is business doing, industry doing, what is civil society doing, what are all these people doing to prepare to meet the climate change, because you have got to prepare. It's a major challenge. And if you're not prepared, it's going to be difficult. The second part of this particular program is to share this knowledge, this learning, this information in terms of what is being done. And that information sharing itself is a part of the preparation for the city. This project has many parts, and I'm sure Raghu Saab will tell you more about it. This project also is looking at vulnerable communities. Who are the people who will be affected most by the climate change? And how is the city preparing to help them meet those challenges, challenges of flooding, challenges of heat wave, challenges of other kinds. The other thing we are doing in this project is studying what is being done to decarbonize the city. What is the thinking and what are the sectoral plans for reducing carbon footprint and thereby, I think, reducing the impact of the climate change. So today's webinar is on one of the many consequences of climate change, which is flooding. And we have extremely competent panel to talk about this subject, in terms of flooding and how to manage city. As you all know, that for Chennai, excessive flooding is not a new phenomenon. We have seen this recently, and of course, earlier 2015, which caused enormous amount of damage, and I think gave a signal of what climate change could be when it happens. And today's panel and Raghu Saab, who is moderating the project, this meeting, would talk about this. Before I hand this over to Raghu Saab to conduct today's episode of the meeting, I should briefly tell you what we are doing under this program, under this webinar series we call Rethinking City. As you probably know, we are doing this for the last 3 years, and this is 103rd webinar. We had, over a period of 3 years, something like 500 urban specialists and experts and professionals, and the community groups come and talk about their experiences, their work, their perspective, their vision on how to manage city in the context of new challenges. Now, what our view, and I think that is precisely what I think led to development of this webinar series, is this, that India's urban challenge is daunting. It's very difficult. And there is a perception that the way we are dealing with it, where things are going, we are not necessarily prepared to meet India's urban challenge properly. And I think let me give you 3 or 4 quick statistics in terms of what is one saying. One is on of course, the population front. India's urban population by 2015 is supposed to touch 870 million people, almost doubling of the population in the next 30 years. And it's obvious that we are not necessarily prepared to meet this huge population explosion that is going to take place in our cities. We also require extraordinarily large amounts of resources to deal with this urban challenge. One statistics which I often quote is the one which was thrown up by the World Bank, and then subsequently a commission which was set up by Government of India. And that is this, that in order to meet India's infrastructure needs deficits in the next 30 years, urban infrastructure deficit, you require something of the order of $630 billion investment. Now, in order to understand $630 billion in 20 years, it's important to know that India did during the previous regime under UP government a very well designed infrastructure investment project called JNNURM, and everyone is aware about this. Now, this was one of the well conceived and well implemented project. But in 10 years of JNNURM, country was able to invest something of the order of $14 billion, that to huffing and puffing, both in terms of resource management and as well as capacity of the system to deliver those projects. So what one is saying is this, that if you are expected to invest $630 billion, to meet infrastructure deficit in 20 years, and in 10 years, all that we manage is 14 billion, it really tells you a lot about the size and the nature of the challenge. Third thing that one wants to kind of talk about is this: the cities are very diabolic in the sense that this is something that one talked about last time too. The cities occupy just 2% of the land mass, and they consume 75% of the resources and throw 75% of the waste in the environment. And therefore, if cities are not taken well, you cannot expect sustainability. And I think one goes on saying that without urban sustainability, there is no overall sustainability. It is in this context, it is in this milieu that we have been kind of doing this webinar series. Idea is to really kind of look at possibility. What we talk about is taking the challenge to people, involve large number of people in understanding its dimension, and try to build up what we call societal partnership to deal with this challenge. The societal partnership basically means involving everyone, all stakeholder, in this understanding it and in meeting the change. So that's the kind of thing we've been doing. We've completed 100 webinars, as I said earlier, and we intend continuing for another long time, at least 50 more webinars. And we'll have to kind of see how effective this work is. But the fact remains that we're committed to it and we are going ahead with it. We're also analyzing and assessing how could it be done better. So with that sort of a longish introduction, and I'm sorry I'm not too well, I will request Dr. Raghunandan to take over and conduct today's session. Thank you. Thank you everyone in the panel. And thank you, Raghu Saab, for this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirtibhai, and good evening to all. Karthik, if I may have my slides up, please, then I'll. Yeah, so what I thought I would do is, I'm not going to make a long-winded presentation to begin with. My colleague Bindhu will make a presentation on behalf of our Climate project on the theme of extreme rainfall and urban flooding at the end. So I will leave that to her. What I thought I would do is to raise some issues and questions before all the panelists and to our audience to set the context of how do we look at this problem of extreme rainfall and urban flooding. Of course, our panelists are free to address the issues as they see fit. But I thought I would set this context so that we sort of place this in the broader context in which these problems and issues are set. We are, of course, going to be discussing problems of extreme rainfall and urban flooding in specific cities. We will have presentations, of course, from Chennai, since we are focusing on that. We also have presentation from Gurgaon in the National Capital Region and from Guwahati area, just to give a sampling of the similarities and differences in contexts of different cities. And I personally think we will find more similarities than differences. So I thought I'll pose some issues and questions which panelists and our participants may ponder while we are listening to the discussions and while we deliberate upon them at the end. So Karthik, the next slide, please. So we know that IPCC has told us that heavy precipitation, extreme rainfall will generally become more frequent and more intense with global warming. Every 0.1 degree Celsius more of global warming will make extreme rainfall more frequent and more intense. And we have already seen this in the past 10 odd years. Just the last few years, we've seen devastating flooding in Europe, in Northern Europe, in Southern Europe, in China. Here in India, we've spoken about Chennai, but we've also seen such flooding in the north, in the Himalayas, in the hills. We've seen it in Delhi, with huge devastating floods in Pakistan. So we have seen these phenomena multiply and grow in severity. The sixth assessment report of the IPCC also tells us that if you compare the scenarios across urban and rural contexts, given the kind of scenario of developing urban areas which Kirtibai was presenting, with growing population in the cities, simultaneously, it has been observed globally that climate impacts are felt disproportionately in urban communities. And in urban communities, the most economically and socially marginalized are the most affected. And this is not surprising because inequalities are built into our structure, and also because urban contexts provide a very compact area in which these impacts take place, which magnifies the extent to which those impacts are felt. And of course, magnifies the costs involved in damages. If 75% of our GDP is generated from cities, naturally disasters in cities will have economically much higher costs than elsewhere. The working group 2 of the IPCC's sixth assessment report has broadly painted a picture of why urban flooding is so damaging and what are the major reasons behind urban flooding caused by extreme rainfall. And it is said that the flooding in urban areas is directly linked to over-concretization, to poor planning of the urban scene, the urban space, due to disruption of natural drainage, due to inadequate stormwater drainage to clear the accumulated runoff, to reduction of wetlands and green spaces, and in general, to a disruption in the surrounding rural areas and catchment systems which govern the drainage of water into the urban spaces. And I think we will see in our different presentations that we will see today examples of each of these major causes behind urban flooding. Next, please, Karthik. So what we've seen is in India, frequent and recurring flooding in Indian cities. As I said, in Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, in Delhi, LCR, Hyderabad. And in all these cases, we have seen these weaknesses or problems that I spoke of earlier. And these common problems and issues we have seen, I won't recount them again. But it's also, we've noticed that even in fairly well-planned cities with good infrastructure, for example, in London, in Beijing, we've seen just in the last 5 years, huge flooding caused by the inability of the infrastructure to handle this extreme rainfall. That is to say, even if you've got all kinds of good plans and good drainage and good infrastructure, the point is the rainfall is so heavy that the systems that you have put in place to clear the excess water is just not adequate for the purpose. So this is the broad scenario within which the IPCC tells us that we need to identify and advance synergies and co-benefits, looking at mitigation, that is decarbonization, at adaptation to build climate resilience to the impacts, as well as sustainable development goals. That is to say, you can't be doing climate action in piecemeal silos. You can't say, I will just do decarbonization. You can't say, I will just tackle extreme rainfall. You can't say, I will just look at sustainable development goals. The approach has to be synergistic and take all these goals into account and look for benefits across these goals. Next, please. Yeah. So I would, in 2 quick slides, pose to you 2 sets of issues. One, which I will call conceptual issues that we are dealing with. And the second link to that are institutional and financial issues. And Kirtibai touched on these in the larger urban context, which get exemplified and magnified in the context of climate change. The first thing that is quite clear in all the literature, and the IPCC underlines this again and again, is that planned urban development is required if you want to build resilience to climate impacts. You cannot go ahead with market-led or laissez-faire urbanization the way it's happening now, where land is just looked on as real estate to be commercialized, and then you go ahead and build it up and sell it without attention to any of the ecological aspects around it. And if you do such planned, sustainable, and climate resilient urban development, then it must be conceived and implemented in such a way that it will bring you multiple benefits across different sectors. But then this requires a new pan-India vision of urbanization and structures which will allow for taking a broader view while at the same time being able to address specifics. Kirtibai spoke of the JNN URM in the previous administration. And since we have now seen the Amrit scheme across so many cities, the smart city mission again across so many cities, neither of these really take into account the problems of climate change. And also look at specific aspects of infrastructure or looking at X or Y aspect of it. So, to my mind, if we want to seriously address the issue of climate impacts in cities, then we either need a new national urban climate action plan, or to visualize climate action in cities as part of a national adaptation plan, which we have not yet begun to formulate, and which in the last 2 COP meetings in COP27 and COP28 has been more and more pushed, and we are likely by 2025 to be virtually required to prepare and be ready to present a national adaptation plan before the COP in 2025. If we are to do that, we have to begin at least conceptualizing the issues now. Next, please. And then if we have to do all that, then these come with financial requirements. And Kirtibai touched on the scale of it that are required. If we just look at the climate change and related infrastructure, it is very clear that costs of the damage caused by urban flooding are extremely high. And of course, every year that passes by, these costs rise. So the more you delay taking action, the more you are going to incur expenditure to tackle the damage year on year as we go along. The second is that if you want to build resilience to climate impacts, to be able to withstand climate impacts, you need both nature-based solutions, ecosystem-based solutions, as well as hard infrastructure. You can't do either or. You can't say, I will only do nature-based solutions. You can't say, I will only do hard infrastructure. And both will require considerable expenditure, even though both will give you good payback of these through savings on the first, one in minimizing damage. My sense is that very few, if any, metros or large cities, forget about the smaller cities and the smaller towns, etc. Even the major metros and cities, or even states, I think will find it difficult to afford the kinds of expenditures required. The previous floods in Chennai, for example, the state government had estimated costs, damages of more than 12,000 crores just in Chennai and the surrounding areas. Forget about the rest of Tamil Nadu. So if the issue of tackling these and spending money to build infrastructure is left to the cities and to the states, effort can only be suboptimal. They will do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and won't be able to do more. So clearly it requires substantial central funding. We noticed during the Chennai floods last time that the central government generously offered assistance of about 450 crores for flood mitigation efforts in Chennai, which was a drop in the ocean in the face of both the damage caused and what the Tamil Nadu government and the city of Chennai were already spending on flood mitigation, stormwater drains, etc. Again, therefore, some integrated pan-India scheme is required to be formulated if we are to seriously meet these challenges that are confronting us. So I'll stop there, having posed these broad issues, and leave it to our panelists to outline the impacts that they have witnessing, that they are talking about, the reasons behind them, and enlighten us on possible solutions in each of the cities that they are going to be talking about. So I will begin by asking Professor Janakarajan to make his presentation on Chennai. So Professor Janak, please, he's from Saki Waters, one of the leading hydrologists and analysts of the situation in Chennai due to extreme rainfall and flooding. Professor Janak, please.
Thank you, Raghu, for this wonderful opportunity. And I really applaud the INHAF staff, particularly Kirtibai, for this initiative. Now it's the 103rd webinar, I believe. It's really, really great to hear about that. Now, just one change, Raghu, that I'm not a hydrologist.
Yeah.
I'm a layman, so trying to understand what climate change and the hydrology is all about.
Yeah.
Anyway, now all that I'm going to talk about this evening is, the title is something like this: Rediscovering the Hydrology and Floods in Chennai and CMA, Chennai Metropolitan Area. So the hydrology existed once. Okay, now that hydrology is gone, we are going to rediscover that hydrology. And probably that is the main reason for the frequent flooding in Chennai and Chennai metropolitan area. Now, having said this, I'm not trying to convey the point that, this is the disruptions in the hydrology, natural hydrological system, which causes flooding, but definitely climate change has got a hand in it. No doubts about it. Climate change has been extremely vigorous. And for the simple reason, I tell you that, as Raghu has indicated, we have been exceeding and we have been really inactive to act on the global warming induced climate change. And we have been very, very, very passive, not just India and all over the world. But then we do talk about in COPs, raise apprehensions, but they act very little. Now, in this context, I always, use three phrases. One, first phrase is no more, KNOW, no more. And second phrase is no more neglect. And third phrase is it's now or never. So we are in that kind of a dire circumstance, a dire situation, and we cannot afford to wait or lose time anymore. And we need to act now. What are we going to act on, and what are the issues? That's something we need to really think about. Now, as far as the urban floods are concerned, in fact, for the particular reference to Chennai, although what I'm going to speak may be relevant to all major cities in India, the key issues are that rainfall, the frequency of flooding in urban India has been increasing. So over the last 15, 20 years, if you look at Chennai, The worst flood that we encountered in the past was 1977. And next one was 1985. Look at the gap. And then after that, after 20 years, we experienced another flood in 2005. And then in 10-year period, we experienced a flood in 2015. And in 6 years period, we experienced a flood in 2021. And now in 2023, we experienced one more flood. Last 10 years, 15 years, we experienced 3 floods. So the frequency of the occurrence of flooding in the urban India has been increasing. It's definitely partly due to climate change. I don't deny. But then there are also other associated issues we need to really talk about. So the key issue here is to what extent floods occur due to historical human errors and blunders, something which we need to really acknowledge. And when I say historical human errors and blunders, these are basically anthropogenic and problems in the land use planning. So to what extent the conventional wisdom followed by the state have yielded to mitigate floods and droughts? What lessons have been learned so far from the past extreme events? Nothing. Although I listed about 6 or 7 flood events in the past, I look for the documentation on what are the lessons learned, implications of the flood, documentation on the flood, nothing. We have no documentation on the floods, not just in Chennai, all over the country. The situation is the same. Although each one of these floods are unique in their own way, the impact is devastating and increasing year after year. You will see that these occurrence of the floods are, it's not something unique, but then it basically you really come across excess rainfall here and excess water years, and you will see water everywhere. But the impact of these floods is really devastating, and this increases year after the year. The current flood is considered the worst in the last 47 years. But will we see more devastation in future? We may. We don't know. But the key concern is have we learned any lesson from the flood events, and have we resorted to any kind of corrective measures so far? Nothing. Our flood approach to floods have been one of flood relief. There is a drought. There is a drought relief. I mean, these things occur, alternatively. But then we stop with handing over only relief measures, and we don't go beyond. But what ought to be done? How do we understand what are the dynamics of these floods, and how do we really contribute to scientific methods in flood mitigation and drought mitigation? What should be done with view to making the city of Chennai flood resilient? Have they thought about it? Is there any kind of a document? I can't come across. Although there is the document issued by the GCC, Greater Chennai Corporation, on climate action. I see them lots of the disintegrated approach in their action plan. So therefore, what exactly can be the way out, and how to convert disaster into an opportunity, which is something which I'm very, 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 seriously insisting on, because it's one thing to talk about a disaster as a disaster, but is there a way to convert a disaster into an opportunity so that one is really positive and really thinks about the resilience measures in a positive way, and then try to go beyond. And the key challenges, as far as Chennai city is concerned, like the urbanization, the increasing scarcity of our land, and most importantly, myopic land use planning. This is true of all cities in the country. Land use planning is absolutely myopic. I mean, you don't really consider. When there is no rainfall, you think all the land is a dry land and so on, and for anything can be done that. But then you really don't understand what the hydrology of that particular piece of land and that particular area. And most importantly, in fact, both Kirtibai and Raghu mentioned the demographic pressure. Demographic pressure is increasing. There's a high population density. And most importantly, I must tell you, it results in decreasing per capita drainage space. See, the population pressure is increasing. And what is the present population density in Chennai city? It is 32,000 per square kilometer. It is 32,000 per square kilometer. It's going to go up to, as estimated, going to go up to 55 to 60,000 per square kilometer in 2050. Look at that. And the direct impact is decreasing per capita drainage space, which means there is no permeable space, and it's all concrete. You are going to see concrete everywhere, roads and concrete and nothing else, and there is no space. Therefore, there is a rainfall. you will come across only runoff, no water percolation. And most importantly, also I must tell you, the vulnerable sections of the population are also increasing, rising slum population. Today in Chennai, 40% of the population of 1 crore, 40 lakhs live in slums, and they are most vulnerable. And at the same time, the increasing rapid industrialization is also asking for more water, and there is no water. And this kind of industrialization also results in not just increasing demand for water, creates problems of pollution, water pollution, and that really contributes to a huge water scarcity. So all these finally, results in very, very big kind of a challenge, particularly because huge surface runoff, huge flooding, declining carrying capacity of the city's drainage conditions and in the CME. So what are we going to do? The flood plains are vanishing, flood buffers are vanishing, wetlands are vanishing, brackish water lakes are vanishing, water bodies are vanishing, and natural drains are vanishing. And so the entire ecosystem, the entire ecology is actually distorted. And in this context, what is really worse is the poor waste management. Solid waste is now become one of the most important reasons for inundation and for flooding in the urban area. And not just a solid waste, industrial waste, liquid waste, biomedical waste, e-waste, building debris. My goodness, all these wastes are creating problems, and because they are all dumped in the streams, water bodies, and in the rivers. And so these are the key challenges. So given these challenges, given the climate change, as a key, issue, how are you going to really mitigate flood? What are we going to do? And what is going to be the future? It is something which is, I really don't know. And in this context, I must tell you that there are laws, legal provisions, acts are announced, but a mere promulgation of laws will guarantee nothing if policy implementation and monitoring mechanisms are extremely are weak. So this is the precise context in which I'm always raising the issue: what is CMDA doing? Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority. What is their mandate? What are they doing? What are they supposed to do? How should they change? There is absolutely no scientific approach. We had a first master plan, no lessons learned. We are in the process of completing the second master plan, no lessons learned, and we are entering to the third master plan from 2026. Okay, and all that they do is use the land wherever it is available. Use the land for industries, infrastructure, and housing, and so on and so forth. But have they published any document relating to the lessons learned from the first master plan? What kind of blunders have they made? How are they going? How have they overcome? So in the second master plan, what are the blunders they committed? Is there a way to really overcome the third master plan? Nothing. In fact, one thing that I've been insisting on the CMDA, Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority, is to publish a document. Two kinds of document. One, not only the lessons learned, and also to say that this is the inventory of ecological hotspots like rivers, streams, water bodies, wetlands, brackish water lakes, and so on and so forth. These are the ecological hotspots, and so these will be protected at any cost, and no developmental activity will be promoted there. Will they be in a position to issue this document? Will they accept it? No, they are not. We have lost wetlands. Unfortunately, we have been losing wetlands. Pallikarne marshland is supposed to be the biggest wetland. It is in the Ramsar Convention. Supposed to be 55 square kilometers area. It used to be spread over 55 square kilometers of area, now reduced to 5 square kilometers. It completely occupied by what is called the IT corridor, big industries, big roads, bridges, all kinds of housing activity, everything. And now when there is a flood, this area is so hugely flooded. And in fact, for your information, this area, metropolitan, the Pallikane marshland, is below sea level. Not even at zero, it's below sea level, which means this area is going to become extremely vulnerable, going to get very badly affected. What is the action plan? No idea. They're trying to, in fact, used as a solid waste dump, but now they are now stopping it. They're trying to do the the solid waste, the eco mining or whatever they call it, but it's not going to be of any use because it's too late to do any retrieval measure. So that is what is about CMDA, and CMDA should really wake up at least now, try to rediscover the city, try to rediscover the distorted hydrology. And then Chennai, even Greater Chennai Corporation should really rediscover the hydrology. Hydrology is completely distorted. Hydrology is lost. What existed before is no more, no more existing. So given that fact, and given the fact that the land is so rapidly occupied, and there are normative concerns raised with regard to, well, we should do this or we should do that, have a drainage master plan. We have to really, restore the rivers, restore the water bodies, spend thousands and thousands of crores. Unfortunately, not very, very helpful because the damage is so much. And then the measures that are trying to do is very, very, very marginal. And in fact, some of the measures are even cosmetic. They're cosmetic interventions, like, on both sides of the river, you create some, the tree planting and some kind of, the grass, spreading grass on both sides of the river, and the water bodies are walking strips all over the water bodies. This kind of a walk track and planting trees and so on are not going to be very helpful. I mean, these are nothing but the climatic, these are the cosmetic interventions. So it is very important that you really wake up and go for most important understanding of your location, which is a coastal city, as Kirtibai said, is a very, very vulnerable coastal city. It's like location is coastal with a very good rainfall. In fact, we had a 53 centimeters of rainfall in 2023 last year in about 2 days' time. Huge rainfall, but at the same time, you come across droughts in the very next year. So it is important that we really understand and appreciate the changing hydrology, hydrogeography, waterscape, elevation, and ecological hotspots, and get the inventory of all that. Try and see what you can do at least now. In fact, if you measure the elevation level of the coastal city, Chennai, I mean, most parts of the city is 5 meters and below, and it is considered the low elevation because the entire city is called in low elevation coastal zone, that is 10 meters and below, and most parts are many parts are below 2 meters and 3 meters. In fact, if there is going to be sea level rise, as it may happen in a decade or so, these cities are going to get very badly affected. In fact, the Climate Central, an organization located in Miami, they predicted, they made their own estimates that the city is going to be seen with a lot of islands, particularly the old Mahabalipuram Road, where the IT corridor and the Pelican marshland are located, are situated. They're going to become very vulnerable. They're going to be lots of inundation compared to the East Coast Road, which is close to the city. That area is better than the road which is below that. So lots of inundations, lots of islands are predicted in Chennai because of its own location. What is really very important is to our own failure to understand the reasons for the flooding. See, after all, the water, when there is a heavy rainfall, flows from west to east, but that flow of water from west to east is not properly tapped. So they allow the water to flood because of the all concretes and the city gets flooded, but then can't you really store the water where it falls? There are about 4,000 water bodies in an area where 15,000 square kilometers area, which is part of a Chennai basin. When there is heavy rainfall, water flows straight into the Chennai city because of the 4 major rivers. They are the flood carriers. So the city gets flooded. So there are 4,000 water bodies in this area. These water bodies are not properly maintained. If these water bodies are properly maintained, the water can be stored there. It will help to mitigate your drought, and it will help to mitigate your flood. At the same time, it will help to recharge your groundwater. You can easily come over, but you are not planning to do that. And this can be one of the most important climate action plans, programs, really, if you want to really mitigate flood. So there are many such things one can talk about. And all that one can say here is that there are structural interventions one can think about. There are non-structural interventions like, NBS, natural-based solutions. There are legal solutions. Individuals, industries, institutions can also, contribute to by way of being water positive. There are many things one can do, and lots I can say, but then time is too short, so I will stop here. All that we need to do is to really think about this very carefully. Don't hide behind climate change for historical blunders and changes in the hydrology. And it's not to say that climate change is a fiction, but one has to really be awakened and be careful about finding solutions. It has to be sustainable. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Janakarajan. I think just to convey to you all that Dr. Partha Das, who was expected to join us from Guwahati, is unable to because there's been a bereavement in his family.
Oh.
So we've passed on our condolences on our behalf to him. So I'll next call upon Vaishnavi Jayakumar, who works with vulnerable communities in Chennai, who has been extremely active in mobilizing and organizing relief for victims of the flooding in Chennai. And we would hear from her on her understanding of the problem of flooding in Chennai, its impact on the vulnerable communities. She's a co-founder of an organization called Banyan and of the Disability Rights Alliance. So Vaishnavi Jayakumar, over to you.
Yeah. Hi. Feeling a little out of place with all the experts over here. I just wanted to clarify that I'm here speaking as just a member of what we call Chennai Cares. It's a citizen rescue and relief. It's a loosely formed organization with representations from other NGOs who do work in the space of disasters. There's representation from TNFS, which was earlier Tamil Nadu Flood Support. Most of us, in fact, came under the banner of Chennai Cares in 2015, though a few of us have been working on disasters from time of tsunami. And floods is not all that we come together for. We're a voluntary group, so everybody, is basically just pitching in with their time and with their connections and just trying to do whatever we can. As far as most of the time, it's about response during the crisis. There is a certain element maybe of routing relief and rehabilitation really only, a couple of our members represented by, let's say, Bhumika Trust, etc., are more active on that front. So, yes, you see, I found the discussion on hydrology really interesting, especially since if you were to look at a timeline of your average of a layperson in Chennai, 2015 was the year that forgive me, people of North Chennai, but really speaking, everybody till 2015 didn't even know of the existence of the Khushpal River till 2015. Till then, Chennai thought it revolved around central Chennai and assumed that there was only the Adyar and the Coombe. In 2021, I think, the rains were, there was flooding in select areas, especially. And I think that was the year, where we learned, in 2015, we had learned about the so many tanks of Chennai and, the big tank and, all those old maps were doing circulation and people were basically realizing how much of this disaster was of our own making. Of Chennai being, flat like a pancake or an idli, and how we have, kind of grossly encroached on, floodplains and low-lying areas all over the place. We've, kind of taken over the water bodies, etc. So while in 2015 we came to know of Khushpal and the big tank, in 2021 we kind of registered the Mambalam Canal, which was, involved in a bit of controversy. And, the kind of rubbish that was, kind of choking the Mambalam Canal. And in 2023, I think our realization was that it was a bit of a shift because, you see, in 2015, there were, so many SOSs, life and death SOSs, which we intervened on, and which we were just trying to do the best we could. But real life and death kind of cases of rescue and medical relief, etc. And while that was definitely a lot better in 2023, there was also the growing realization that, for one, whatever little focus there was on relief centers in the years since 2015, because all said and done, we've had Varda, we did have the migrant population wave during COVID. So that entire focus on relief, on shelters for crisis had kind of diminished to the extent that even though we were preparing for the monsoon season and we repeatedly reached out to Chennai Corporation saying that we'd like to know which the shelters are so that we can kind of put it out on a map, indicate to people that shelters are no longer after 2015 for people who live bang next to the riverside in huts over there. After 2015, the middle class has to be prepared to evacuate if needed, because we have enough tragedies, of and examples of people who did not obey when they were told to, get out of an unsafe environment, and who perished. But in 2023, we had this unusual phenomenon of the realization that, for one, we never did finally get that information or that list of which are the relief centers. We had asked for it for a very specific reason. One was for, yes, people to know that in my neighborhood, that particular relief center is going to be not just for relief, but even for coordinating. Like if I need healthcare, if I need food, etc., that would be the hub, because that's the way government operates. I mean, we had learned from prior experience in a colleague who was disabled, who was unable to evacuate to a relief center, went without food for around 2 days and was suspended in water up till his neck. He's a wheelchair user. For the simple reason that people forgot and in the panic left him behind. And while the government system managed people who were in the shelters pretty well, if you were in distress and not in a shelter, then you were in trouble. And in 2023, we wanted to make sure that those shelters were ready for people with diverse issues, whether it is a person on a wheelchair, or let's say a person with balance issues, a crutch user. What about food, for example, if someone is on a specific diabetes diet, is the food which is being provided recognizing that and accommodating for such needs as well. And above all, we wanted to also see that is the toilet accessible for a person who is elderly, with grab bars, etc. And is there a close a public toilet which is working, which can handle the overflow? Because unlike Orissa, which has a complete network of cyclone shelters, etc., in Chennai, the shelters are kind of practically your schools. They're your schools which are kind of used in times of governmental need, and as such may not be really catering to adults in the first place, leave alone around 100 adults at a time. The school toilet infrastructure may not be able to take it. So we never did get that information. But given the kind of pattern of the rainfall and what local Chennai Rain Relief also has Shrikant, the weather blogger, and his kind of knowledge on what to expect going forward, we realized that though the Chennai disaster management plan has, an extensive list of everything you need to know, nobody's following it. And secondly, um, though there is a, kind of recognition that there are high rises, so, it even lists the high rises as far as slums and tenements are concerned. It does not address the other privately developed high rises, which kind of are time intensive. So when you look at it, all said and done, the response is kind of lopsided because, to a very large extent, because of social media, and you have a situation where there are people in need, let's say in pockets of North Chennai or in Vyasapadi, they have been requesting, it is being raised. There is photographic evidence. Requests have been made repeatedly to helplines, but there is no action. There is zero follow up. Whereas there is so much of slogging happening with JCBs and those videos floating around of delivery with this cane and to the first floor, kind of transferring water and food and the kind of time intensive nature of that. That's I mean, at this point of time, we kind of realize that preparation of henceforth for someone in Chennai is no longer going to mean that, okay, in 2015, to some extent, it was like the shock that, especially with the late release from the Chembrambakam reservoir, there was that trust that okay, the government will kind of take care of things, and then there was the dawning realization that, oh my god, they don't seem to be around. And then of course, yes, everybody was around, but one's faith was kind of slightly shattered by that point. uh, to now it is like whoever shouts the most and whoever makes the most impact on social media is unfortunately getting attention, and there doesn't seem to be any equitable form or coordinated kind of response, because no matter what you do and how well prepared and the good document that you have this kind of disconnect. So, for example, you have a list in your disaster management plan which has got all the trained volunteers, not a joke, to train volunteers under the Apda Mitra scheme, etc. That's the way to go forward, really, because I mean, if you're talking about community trained volunteers spread across the city, you would at least not have to call the single helpline. You could call a local volunteer who knows the local area that much better and who could get help to you a lot faster, rather than people having to travel long distance if you're a private volunteer, that is. And those trained volunteers, nobody really knows where they were and what they were doing. In the end, it all kind of boiled down to the usual: we've run out of water, we've run out of food, there's a baby that needs milk, and so and so's had an accident, and pregnant women need to, kind of go to the hospital. And between one iteration to the next, yes, by the time there was flooding in South Tamil Nadu, I think in one district, the collector, kind of organized in advance that all the pregnant women who were, kind of near their delivery date were asked to come to the hospital in advance, so that, there is no heroic rescue that is required all over the place. It was kind of planning in advance. Of course, there were, kind of issues over there as well, because even by then, there was flooding, and people would have to get over there by themselves. And that was kind of tough, and there were no arrangements made for that. But still, that was one minor learning. But at the end of the day, I think what's really required and what we observed this time round was that in urban India, we've become so isolated and so insular in a sense, especially if you live in a kind of flat or a high rise, people don't know their neighbors. And we were getting, so many requests from a single housing complex. And it was such a waste of time. So my colleague Sudha later on came up with this model in which she literally, for each of these, massive housing and condominium complexes, kind of started a WhatsApp group, kind of put one person in charge of collecting all the requirements. And that one person was put in charge with, was connected to the IAS officer who was responsible for that area. So that instead of, 500 requests of more or less the same thing, it was channelized. And that kind of at least brought down the load to some extent. But if you really look at doability, are we going to be able to do this in future? I don't know. And therefore, I think we also need to pivot to a situation where, some kind of self-sufficiency and planning in advance. We seem to have in India really, kind of selective memory as far as tragedies go. COVID seems so long ago. So many of the tragedies that happened over there are like, haven't fully, kind of left an impression. And even we're going from one flood to another of being wary when it is monsoon season. And we are nowhere near the point where we are like, okay, I have a baby in the house, and therefore let me stock up on milk powder before, I mean, monsoon preparedness doesn't seem to be a thing. When Cyclone Varda came, even the basics people don't seem to be doing, like, kind of closing your windows and, even the basic safeguards. So, you tend to have people going to the other extreme as, can a volunteer come and deliver me breakfast? Because we are all in a hostel and we haven't eaten. So you do tend to get requests of that sort, along with the whole life-saving, so and so is in an accident and there's no ambulance that will come, that can come, and so we coordinate with the 108 ambulance people, and they kind of get two people in a stretcher and evacuate people. So, given that, there is still chaos as far as the receiving of issues goes, uh, one tends to think fondly of the Kerala model. When Kerala had really bad monsoons a while back, they had this, website which was called, I think, KeralaRescue.in, and one could argue that, I mean, access to the web and the internet itself is such a huge thing nowadays. But that again is something that we need to, kind of plan and anticipate that, towers will go down, that give people a WhatsApp number, because in some ways the telephone is down, but you can still somehow manage with Wi-Fi. All those kind of learnings really need to be, kind of absorbed and, remembered, more importantly. And as far as high rises go, I think Professor Janakarajan had mentioned how Chennai, parts of Chennai are going to be like little lakes with water in between, I mean, little islands with water in between. And yeah, I think starting now, some of the high rises and complexes and colonies need to be prepared to be marooned for, let's say, a week and plan accordingly. And I think to some extent that is happening. We've seen that, like, from 2005, there were, 2 to 3 high rises. And here I'm talking not sadly about people in the resettlement colonies who have flats built in, again, problematic low-lying areas, etc. I'm talking about, kind of privately developed flats. And we do find that the communities do seem to have learned, and it's not the same, people calling out for help each time. But I think we're at the point of time where even the administration is struggling to, kind of cope with the sheer volume of requests, that it would make more sense for Chennai to basically be better prepared. And to plan for a situation in which, if you were stuck alone for 1 week without power, and you were stuck on the terrace of your high rise, how would you manage for water? What would you do for your bathroom? Do you have enough dry food? Can you cook for the community, over there? Would you be able to manage without, needing to be rescued? Because in such cases, how many people can you rescue? It's just simply not possible in that kind of time. Where will you rescue people to? There are no specific shelters, and even if there are, the kind of logistics of getting people, from around 5 feet strong running water is not a joke. You can evacuate only people who are in a medical, emergency, or who are frail and who would probably not survive. Uh, and even that, as far as possible, as in the case of pregnant women or people who are dependent on power. These are the things that we take so much to heart when you hear that a person who was dependent on oxygen after COVID died because of lack of power, because power goes during, is turned off even for safety reasons during rains. And if a person dies as a result of that, that kind of lack of planning, given that civil society has reached out to the
Finding the fastest
administration,
route to Kasuma, head straight for 4 kilometers to Ahare.
is kind of is criminal. So I think there needs to be some amount of accountability, and there have been, so many organizations, civil society responses in Chennai. You have the Chennai Climate Action Group, and the realization, through the Porambok song, etc., the importance of floodplains. At least people know that and do make a noise when, after the 2023 rains, literally the next day, there was an article about some huge development being given permission from the CMDA to build again on the banks of the Coombe. So at least people have a better realization of that. It was thanks to the NGO Arapur Yakam that, we even the public got access to the stormwater drain maps and discovered that just how many of the stormwater drains in Chennai were built with a reverse gradient, which is mind blowing. So there are civil society responses, but unfortunately, as far as a government goes, while it seems to be still pretty person dependent, there is improvement. I'm not denying that, but is it enough? And could we have managed to save the more vulnerable amongst the people with just that little bit of extra planning, because we knew what to do, we knew what needed to be done, and yet the government didn't do it. It didn't even give us a list of the shelters finally. And we know from experience, we checked out the shelters in 2021, and some of the shelters which they said that, there were people there, etc., were themselves underwater. And that is something that, one really needs to think. There's no point in having a Chennai disaster management plan and a list of shelters and where they're located if your shelter itself is vulnerable. In fact, in Vyasa,
Vaishnavi ma'am, you're on mute. Vaishnavi ma'am, you're still on mute.
sorry, yeah, I don't know how that happened. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So in Vyasa Party, for example, The person from, I don't know what the office was, the government office literally was cooking food nonstop. And nobody knew. I mean, some, kind of politically connected people did have an idea that, food is available. So while they were cooking, first of all, the place where they were supposed to be cooking got flooded. And then they moved from, the Kalyana Mandapam to the community hall and then to another facility. And all those places got flooded. So they finally hauled all their cooking supplies, etc., and were cooking from within the government office itself, which is not kind of equipped for that kind of operation. And they cooked nonstop, throughout the day. Their difficulty was that they didn't have the resources to deliver food to the various streets. And unfortunately, the streets didn't know that the food was available, that there was hot cooked food available. And somehow the dissemination of that information didn't really happen. So, yes, it's great that on paper we have, so many trained volunteers. I don't know what they were doing. We were curious to know what role they played in 2023, given that so many were trained under the scheme. But, some kind of better awareness and perhaps, for example, even in this one place in Vyasarpadi, there's supposed to be in this disaster management plan, the even location of boats. And it's like, it's becoming a running joke that, okay, monsoon season and everybody is going to say, do you have any boat contacts? And according to this disaster management plan, in this particular area, there was supposed to be a boat already located. The disaster management plan has indicated where it is located, but it wasn't there. And it's not a bad idea, maybe not a boat, but at least, one of those rubber inflatable raft to take, the food which is being cooked in this little island, which is still, above water, to the various streets which are still underwater and likely to be that way for around, another 3-4 days. It's not a bad idea, but it's not happening. And unfortunately, no body is questioning the authority.
Vaishnavi, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I
Yeah.
think
I'm done right now.
Yeah.
So I would think that our biggest challenge is be prepared to be marooned and persisting in holding the government a little bit more accountable as far as what's on paper is so not happening on the ground. There's effort, but effort's not enough. Not when a person has to die because nobody thought of what will happen, for 2 days without power and what happens to his oxygen concentrator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi. I wish we had more time to listen to more experiences from the ground. But now I think we've sort of made up for one person not being with us. So we'll quickly catch up now with where we were. I'll now request Dr. Khushpal Dahiya to speak. Dr. Khushpal is from the way I know him, he represents many organizations, but I know him as a representative of the Gurgaon Water Forum, which is a group of a large number of civil society organizations, activists, and so on, working in the so-called Millennium City of Gurgaon in the National Capital region to talk to us about the issues there. Dr. Dahiya?
Good evening, sir. And good evening to all the panelists. And Dr. Raghu has given me this opportunity to speak out about some issues and challenges of Gurugram, the Millennium City. So when Raghu sir was calling the Millennium City, a bitter smile came on my face, because whensoever we are just talking about such a topic that is we are discussing right now, whether it is only focused about Chennai, but I think so Gurgaon is very unplanned city. I would like to say that. Means it's a city by chance. I call it like this because from last 20 years I'm working over here and I have seen that how the things have got changed over here. Because a builder comes, he starts his own planning. There is no correlation between the rest of the city and the natural strata or the natural environment that used to exist in these areas. Anyhow, sir, I do have a slide as well. I have prepared. I mean, I would like to share it with you all.
Thank you.
Let me just share my screen. Is it visible, sir, now? Sir, my screen is visible to all of you or not?
Yes, it is. इसको मैक्सिमाइज कर दीजिए डॉक्टर दहिया साहब.
Yes, sir. I'm just.
साइड में सॉर्टर नहीं आया.
Is it fine, sir, now?
फर्स्ट क्लास.
Is it fine, sir, now?
Fine. It's absolutely fine.
Hello, sir.
It's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine, Dr. Dahiya.
yes. Sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, I have not got my doctorate yet, but I don't know who has written the doctorate. I am Khushpal Dahiya right now.
कोई बात नहीं सर, सब डॉक्टर हैं.
Thank you. So, basically, my background is a bit from remote sensing and GIS. So, I just observed the city from my perspective as well. So, I have mapped some of the things about Gurgaon that reflect the reality of it. So, about the rainfall issue, if I see that Gurgaon just get around 650 to 700 millimeter of rainfall, and it maximum happens during the monsoon time. And during the winter season, we just get rest of the 55%, means 15% of rainfall or so and so forth. So the maximum rainfall that occurs in Gurgaon is during the monsoon time. And the thing is this, that let me just go discuss a bit of a background over here about the city perspective. That from, if we put a glance from 40 to 45 years of the urban growth in Gurgaon, because in 1973, 77, some of the satellite images we explored, at that particular time, Gurgaon used to be a town only, a small town, where some of the migrants, means when some of the people unfortunately came from the 1947, some of the colonies had been given allotted over there. That is also to be called a very limited portion. And otherwise, Gurugram village was there, and a market from that particular village used to exist. And then Air Force Station came. And at that particular time, the Air Force Station used to be quite huge as compared to the city. So, in the eastern side, there are hills, Aravali Hills. They used to supply water to the whole rural area. This was totally a village dominant area where agriculture was the main source of income for the villagers. All villages used to exist, and there were some natural strips in a very organized and natural way. So, this is the satellite data. This is the topographic sheets of 1992. Quite, I think so, in between. Means if I talk about 70s or 80s, then in 1992, I just mapped it and just find out the drainage pattern. You just see that from this particular side, this is in the upper part. If you can see my mouse over here, 3-4 streams are over here in this cluster. These are when we are entering in Gurgaon. If anybody of you have visited over here, except Raghu sir, and because when we are coming from the airport side, then ambience mall start and the whole DLF area starts. So in that particular portion, there used to be 3 important nalas that used to flow from the eastern side. Then this is the hilly portion of the Aravali. And then there used to be a lake called Ghata Lake. Ghata is a village. In name of that village, there used to exist an lake. And that used to have almost 90 square kilometer area, including the catchment area from the Delhi side itself. And in the portion that connects the area from Delhi side is basically what we call Asola Wildlife Sanctuary. Asola Wildlife Sanctuary, then from the Faridabad side, and then the water used to flow in this lake. And let me tell you, an area of 90 square kilometer that used to supply a huge water to the Gurgaon and Gurgaon nearby areas is nowadays providing 0 a percent of water to the city. It's a huge issue, but nobody bothered about it. I will just show you some pictures of this lake as well nowadays. Anyhow, so this is the same pattern that has been superimposed on the satellite image. And you can see that the blue lines are the lines of the drainage over here. These red lines, those are just visible, are the check dams. Those had been constructed at that particular time due to stop the impact of the flash floods. It means Aravalli area used to supply water that was required to be controlled. So this Ghata Lake used to also have a huge check dam. The size width of the check dam was 100 meters, quite huge, and it was a good lake as well. Then you can see that there is a continue other stopping over here in this area, but one particular channel is just trespassing the whole Gurgaon city. This is called as the Gurgaon drain, or we call it the Badshapur drain. This is the basically channel that carries the slope or the represents the whole slope of the current city as well. And before 4 or 5 years back, there was a huge flash flood came, and the Gurugram was jammed. 24 hours, the people were just standing on the road, and the water spread everywhere. Actually, this was the drain that we call it Badshapur drain. And the most important thing is this, that the water didn't come from the Aravalli hills that I just told you. So the whole the quantity, the volume of water that raised at that particular times only was the surface runoff. So mismanagement, poor drainage system, like so on and so forth. Anyhow, so I have just mapped the whole area, the 4 zones of current municipal corporation of Gurgaon area, and you can see that in the whole this portion there used to be only 3 main functional water channels, or these nalas, streams, seasonal streams. One is the southernmost, the largest one. As I told you, the Badshapur drain was finally connecting to the drain number 8, or the Nazafgarh drain. The second one was the Sikandarpur, and then it used to come to the Chakarpur and Gurgaon village, and finally again was going to merge with the Nazafgarh drain. And the third one as well, the Sikandarpur and this Nathupur drain, where I just told you the ambience mall and all other things. That Nala also used to be one of the biggest. So 3 main water channels used to exist, and all 3 are nowadays means getting the source of water from the Aravalli region in a 0%. So total scenario almost changed. Total scenario changed. So what is that? This is already I have told you. And meanwhile, last 25 years of urban development, almost all the natural drainage system has got defunct. And recently, in a study report submitted by the Gurgaon District Administration to the NGT, they recognize that Gurgaon has lost 389 water bodies in last 60 years. It's a huge number. And these water bodies were not the lakes kind of thing. These are used to access the village ponds. Because in Haryana, if you see that the people who stay in villages, we are from the farmer means community. Parallelly with the agriculture, we also keeps the animals, means buffaloes, cows, like so and so forth. So for them, for these cattle, we used to ponds used to exist. The ponds used to exist from 3 ponds, 2 ponds, 4 ponds, like so and so forth per village. It means the one village used to have 3-4 ponds. So this was the scenario. Anyhow, the major factors nowadays and the behind this, because nowadays I'm saying that the Arauli hills are not generating the water. So what has happened to these water channels and all other things? Encroachment and exploitation of the natural setting and resources of human being, by human being, lacking, ignoring about the environmental perspective in the urban development plan. There is no coordination between 3 departments that I have seen, that I have experienced. One is the urban plan, means planning department, town and country planning. Its coordination was must with the revenue department, because revenue department is responsible for preparing the maps and to map even the water features. There was no relationship. Then the third department is the municipal corporation or the means district administratives. They were also not bothered about any natural strata of this particular city. One particular image that is nowadays, I have just shown this particular slide because now the GMDA has came in picture, Gurugram Metropolitan Development Authority, and they have just taken 2 of the lakes. One is this particular lake is Wazirabad Lake, we call it, and this Nala used to flow earlier. This Nala, actually, I just want to make it clear now over here. This Nala is marked in the revenue map. So that's why the builder could not encroach it. Still, it is existing in its natural shape. And finally, it just generates a lake kind or a pond kind of thing. Another lake that I was just talking about, the Ghata Lake, that used to have 90 square kilometer. I have map. I do have some satellite images of 1970s or like that particular area, where we can see the natural shape of this lake and the whole catchment of area. Nowadays, the lake is totally dry, and the builder has been given permission to construct their flats and all other things on the bed of the river. So this is where we are just taking our planning now. Anyhow, another areas, you can see that the roads have been constructed where there the Nala used to flow. And this road is not a normal road. It is nowadays, we call it the cyber city road. The where in this particular zone, all the means offices of the international organizations are existing. Those are working in the MNCs. I should the right name should be the MNCs. Multinational organization companies are working in this particular zone only. And the roads those are built over here are on the Nalas. So another picture of a pond that used to be good in size, a community center, parks, other things have been constructed out. So another stream, up to this particular portion, the natural strata is appearing because this particular area is under the defense or the Indian Air Force. This area is of Ayanagar side. Then this Nala enters in the Dera Mandi village, this particular area, and then it is coming finally to the Gwalpadi village, where actually the Haryana starts. So the farmhouses got constructed. The Nala was not recorded in the revenue map. That's why the farmers purchased the land. They built up the farms and or like that. Another area, someone purchased the land. he just tried to stop the Nala. The Nala brought huge volume of water, means finally just trespassed the boundary wall and all other things that had been dumped on the way. Anyhow, finally, the people have encroached like this. And fine, in the western side, from the eastern side, the Aravalli Hills are existing. The whole city is having a slope of almost 80 meters. And then this is the low-lying area of almost 3-4 districts. Even the water from center of the Haryana, means just like Rohtak district, Sonipat district, then Jhajjar district, the water just comes and flow through drain number 8, or in Gurgaon or nearby area, we call it the Najafgarh drain. The water also used to reach here from the Rewari district as well. And there used to be a seasonal river we call the Sahabi Nadi that used to flow from Rajasthan, nearby from Jaipur. The flow used to come in this side. Nowadays, the water conservation means activities came in picture in Rajasthan, and nowadays the water is not coming from there as well. So anyhow, the main point is this that this whole area is the low-lying area, and finally the water from the surface runoff mainly is reaching finally to this area. Plus the whole sewage system of the Gurgaon also, because nowadays the flash floods, or we just call it the fresh water in form of rain, that is coming in form of surface runoff, that is also reaching over here through the sewage. Sewage and open drainage are mixed over here. There are no open drains nowadays in Gurgaon. Those used to exist as the natural nalas, they have converted in the sewage system. Sewage means box drains, like so on. The condition is really very. And one good thing has happened over here, that at least I should say that that the wetland area has a bit increased, or at least sustaining, because if the rainwater is not reaching, at least the sewage is reaching over there, though it is very stinking, very open, but some of the water weeds and other strata is taking its natural shape. So now some of the people are also just claiming that this area should be declared as wetland. So the fight is going on nowadays through the environmentalists. So major threats, if we see that disaster by the surface runoff nowadays, whose volume water is coming to the built up area, traffic jam, lot of resources wastage is going on. Sewage blocking is very common. The poor management from the sewage maintenance, all other things, open drains do not exist over here. And if I talk about what we should model and how the analysis should be taken care of, so the drainage pattern and an elevation model, we have also just developed 3D and all other things. We can understand it. But the thing is that we have to stop the water where it falls. As Dr. Janakarajan was just talking about, we had also proposed some of the things about these things, that we have to divide the Gurgaon in different zones, and we should not generate the surface water. So surface water can be conserved. Actually. Anyhow, alternate route of natural streams, check dams and natural water storage are required. Renovation of ponds and lakes is required. Modern approach for water conservation, surface as well as subsurface methods are required. In some of the activities from the Gurgaon Water Forum also, we are also doing street level means a water conservation system we have implemented. 2-3 I was also part of implementing. Meanwhile, we are working in this scenario, and we are just taking it in a bigger moment, means in coming future. Then I think so.
Yes, sir. Are you winding up?
Pardon, sir.
Can you wind up, please?
Sir, This is my last ride.
That's what I thought.
Because you know that the challenges are there, but I think so we have to organize these kind of programs that you have started. I think so we have at one particular time and one particular platform, Gurgaon Water Forum had taken some of the initiative, but I think so we have to strengthen ourselves more. And this webinar is definitely means strengthening us to take the concept ahead. And we will see some better initiatives in the coming future. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you so much, Dahiya sir.
connecting me with this.
Thank you. Thank you. Without spending more time, I'll quickly call our next and the final presenter, Bindhu from the Climate Chennai project to present findings of the climate project study on the situation in Chennai. Bindhu?
Yes, thank you, Raghuji. I'm not able to share my screen. I think, yes, thank you. Yes, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Right.
Bindu, if you don't mind my saying, you'll have to sort of accelerate your presentation, okay?
Yes, Raghuji, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, good evening, everybody. I will jump right into the presentation. So over the past few months, we have been working on what we call as the approach paper to climate action in Chennai, which is basically it confines proposals for climate action in Chennai, and it is backed by research and study on existing context, climate change impacts, and adaptation, resilience, and emission reduction potential across various sectors of city development. It also reflects on GCC's, which is the Greater Corporation of Chennai's latest Chennai Climate Action Plan. And it tries to identify gaps, weakness, and suggest some improvements and tries to add value to their report. And a very important aspect of the paper is that it emphasizes on actions with co-benefits between sectors and across adaptation and mitigation themes. And finally, it is a work in progress document, and we would like to iterate it and update it with the actions that the city is planning to take, and also upon interactions with various experts and stakeholders. So very quickly, the sections of the approach paper. We have adaptation and mitigation on the broader level, and this particular session will be, we will be dwelling deeper into the extreme rainfall and urban flooding specific to Chennai city. To give quickly a brief overview of the city, it is a coastal city, one of the largest metropolises of India, and we have a 10 million population, a density of almost 32,000 people per square kilometer. It is one of the most vulnerable districts to the changing climate and the increasing rainfall patterns. It has a 31% informal settlement population, and I think being the oldest municipality in India is something very peculiar about the city. And talking about Chennai's risk of urban flooding, firstly, there are two kinds of factors that contribute to it. And what I've listed on this slide are mostly default or natural reasons, natural factors that cause urban flooding. Firstly, it is the changing climate, the rapidly changing climate. We have projections for Chennai city that there is going to be an evident increase in rainfall pattern, making it more frequent, more intensive, and resulting in extreme flooding situation. And secondly, the cyclone prone scenario. Chennai is located in the highly exposed southeast coast of India, and it has always received extreme rainfall, especially during its northeast monsoon season. The city is highly vulnerable to these tropical cyclones, making it a high risk flood region. And thirdly, the city's topography, it is relatively low and has a flat terrain. It has an average elevation of 6.7 meters, implying that majority of the areas in the city are the sea level, below the sea level. So secondly, there are factors that are contributing to Chennai's risk of urban flooding, which are a result of the rapid and haphazard urbanization of the city, especially over the last 2 decades. I think, what can be called as anthropogenic factors or man-made factors that have led to the extreme vulnerability of the city to flooding. So again, this is most of the points are have been mentioned by Janak sir. In fact, he was one of our consultants when preparing this report. To quickly point out on each of the factors that are listed here, firstly, we have the risk of inundation. Like I said, the projection, for example, very specifically, there is going to be a 46% of land inundation in the next 25 years. With an average rainfall of 380 mm per day. That's the severity of the vulnerability of the city to extreme rainfall in the coming years. And, the unplanned urbanization, like I mentioned, the rapid increase in built up area, it has happened at the cost of, at the loss of, cities' critical ecosystem, water-based ecosystem in specific. And if you look at the areas that have been affected by floodings, they're directly correlated. There have been rampant violation of building rules, construction over natural water bodies. There have been so much of reclassification of agricultural lands. There have been pattas that were issued on water bodies, many diluted rules and regulations, especially in the pursuit of real estate value. And I think we can very evidently say that this urbanization of Chennai over the years has happened at the cost of its hydrology. And further elaborate on that, all the rivers, major drains, canals of the city are clogged with untreated sewage, solid wastes, water hyacinth, biomass. So if most of the, especially when we're talking about the three major rivers that are flowing within the city, which in fact, if they are working at their highest potential, are such a blessing to the city, but unfortunately the current situation doesn't allow them to be. They're extremely stagnant. They've become like the sewage carriers of the city. There have been massive encroachments on the riverbeds and also the wetlands and other so many water bodies that Chennai has. In fact, a quick fact, the depth of the rivers have shrunk from 2 feet to 14 feet because of deposits of sludge and sewage and solid waste. There has been no dredging. And similarly, the depth of the Buckingham Canal was 6 feet below sea level when it was built, and currently the depth is 3 feet above sea level due to siltation. And that is, I think, a very severe problem that has come upon our water bodies and rivers. So I think on an overall level, the hydrological network of the city has been disrupted, and including the intertidal action. Being a coastal city, efficient drainage happens at the mouths of the rivers where they're meeting the ocean, and this natural phenomenon is also greatly disturbed. The next issue is the fewer and shrinking wetlands. I think wetlands again are such a blessing to the city, especially talking about the Ennur Creek on the northern part of Chennai and the Pallikanai marshland, which falls in the southern part of Chennai. They have a great capacity to soak water and release them during the drought phases. They could act like the lungs of the city, but unfortunately, they have been again exploited. For example, the Pallikanai marshland has shrunk down to 10% of its original square kilometers, as I think this is something that Janak sir also spoke about. And it has been exploited with real estate overrun by buildings. It also has a 191-acre dump yard, and also the link to the sea and tidal action is disrupted because of these. And not to mention, Ennur Creek has become a victim to industrial pollution. There is so much fly ash content in its soil. It has become, the nature of the creek itself has become saline, which against its nature of being a freshwater wetland. And of course, other industrial pollutants have been found on the wetlands. And even the latest gas leak that happened in the Ennur region, it's extremely alarming. So there needs to be, strict policies against this kind of disruptive industrial development. And I think the rampant reclassification of land use, especially during the second master plan, again, with a lack of strict policies, has led to the overall concretization of, leading to more surface runoff and less storage for rainwater on and underground. And thirdly, the insufficient stormwater drainage systems. I think we just had an elaborate presentation on this by Dr. Khushpal. We have a very similar situation in Chennai as well. The stormwater drainage has been insufficient and inefficient throughout the decades. And in fact, Chennai was relying on a system that was built almost a century ago, until only recently that they've realized this and started working on improving the capacities of the drains and expanding the network to other parts of the city where it was not present. And the issue with stormwater drainage planning initially was that it was not scientifically based. It is important to consider the density of the area, the capacity required for the area, the rate of flow, the stream study, the topography. Many solid waste stormwater drains are not interconnected. So all of these need a backing study, before being implemented, and that is something still missing. I feel, although the latest stormwater drain project in the northern part of Chennai has seen some improvement with respect to the recent flooding, but this needs to be implemented in a more efficient and on a more scientifically based way, especially in the southern part of the city. You know, we need a good overall drainage master plan that is based on scientific study. And we also have the issue of insufficient reservoir capacity and the issue of groundwater scarcity. So, you know, the combined capacity of all the reservoirs in Chennai is, you know, 13,000 million cubic feet against the annual demand of 22,000 million cubic feet. And that implies that the rest of the demand that is not met, we are taking it from the groundwater, you know, and thus leading to the over exploitation of groundwater and poor recharge. You know, they've and you know, all of this put together has created cycles of flooding and dire water shortage in the city. So when we're coming to the potential solutions, right? So I think we've discussed what the various causes are, and moving on to potential solutions, we first have the most obvious solution, which is to improve stormwater drains. I think we've seen what good stormwater drains can do to reduce the risk of flooding from Khushpal sir's presentation. I don't think I should be talking very much in detail on that. Secondly, we need additional reservoirs, and in fact, not just additional reservoirs, but also more efficient reservoir management. For example, the 2015 floods of Chennai city have, you know, one of the major reasons for such extreme flooding was reservoir mismanagement. So on a governance level, this needs to be addressed on a governance level, and you know, it has a lot to do with the management of reservoirs during such critical situations. And we definitely need more vulnerability studies, risk assessment, and scientific studies. I think this is something again that Janak sir has pointed out. Especially, you know, something as basic as documentation of floods would also help greatly in you know, trying to achieve a more holistic flood mitigation strategy. And I think we also need micro level vulnerability and risk assessments to prepare more localized solutions, you know, and studies that are based on understanding the topography and hydrology of the cities need to be done. These are something so basic, but are missing when we are formulating, you know, solutions on a larger scale. And the fourth solution is early warning systems and disaster preparedness, which I think Vaishnavi ma'am has covered so wonderfully in detail, especially on the lines of disaster preparedness and disaster relief. So I'm not going to get deeper on that. And the next solution is integrated urban management. Like I mentioned, we need better management. You know, Chennai has been suffering with governance issues, especially different departments working in silos. So this needs to be addressed. For one specific example would be, you know, with respect to urban flooding. With the urban stormwater management, if it is supported by the management of other urban utilities like sewage collection and treatment and solid waste collection, it can lead to a more holistic flood mitigation strategy and management. So the you know, the coordination between different departments and a coordinated implementation is the way forward in this aspect. And of course, public awareness, capacity building, and participation of people in flood mitigation efforts is also something very crucial. In fact, this is, you know, pushed away from being given importance, but it is very crucial and it plays a great role in flood mitigation efforts. The next solution would be free-flowing rivers, something that undeniably is a great solution for the city to tackle urban flooding. Unclogging the rivers, again, like I mentioned, Adayar, Kuam, and Kosastai, which very much flow within the city limits, could act as a great potential flood mitigation strategy. Unclogging them would be a great strategy, making them sewage free, and very importantly, retrieving their full potential of the carrying capacity. The drainage capacity of these rivers could be retrieved by almost 25 to 50% just by widening them, dredging, deepening them, and also making them sewage free. Basically, there have been issues of depositing untreated sewage into these rivers, and if that is addressed. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I think unclogging the rivers is a crucial step, and also we need strict policies and laws for the protection of all these water bodies. We've seen how, like I mentioned, pattas have been issued for lands that were on water bodies. So dilution of such regulations and laws and policies has resulted into the menace that we are facing now. So there is an extremely extreme need for strict policies and laws, especially integrating the solutions into the master plan is something very crucial, and having an effective land use policy as well. And one interesting fact about this solution is that it has a lot of co-benefits as well. Very quickly going through them, it is going to improve the diversity, and it is going to eventually become a thriving ecosystem. And of course, with free flowing healthy rivers, it's going to improve the urban environment and livability. It will have a positive impact on the health of the city and its people, and also bring recreational benefits. And of course, there is going to be restoration of normal tidal flushing and exchange, which is very crucial for efficient draining. Another solution is, again, something very like a continuation of the first solution, which is restoration of wetlands and water bodies. Like I said, wetlands play a very crucial role for Chennai city, especially Palikarnai marshland and the Ennur Creek marshland. And I think these wetlands should be restored not in silos, not considering them as individual bodies, but looking at them from a whole larger perspective, and what we would like to call as integral hydrological approach, something that in fact we got a deeper understanding on it from Janak sir, that we need to address all the water bodies, wetlands from a holistic perspective, looking at the Chennai river basin as a whole, and then working down to the individual rejuvenation of the bodies. And I think a special attention to the coastal water bodies should also be considered, and they play an important role in draining into the ocean. And some of the co-benefits to quickly list down is, like I said, wetlands act as a sponge for the city. They soak up a lot of water and release them eventually. They can act as a balance to counter the drought phases of the city, and extremely beneficial for groundwater recharge, and definitely improved biodiversity. In fact, Palikarnai marshland is known for its bird watching recreational activities. And more importantly, all the water bodies and wetlands help us reduce flooding by holding the surface runoff. The final two solutions that I want to focus on are increasing green cover, right? Urban local forest with native trees, and how we can integrate that with master plan. Basically, the overall idea of this is to increase the percolation and absorbing capacity of the city, so that we improve the groundwater levels. Of course, this also needs to be done in a strategic way, because we need to keep in mind the existing groundwater levels in mind while implementing this particular solution. And even like the earlier speakers mentioned, building recharge pits and encouraging rainwater harvesting in all buildings. It is all going to, especially retrieving usage of open wells, something, it's a very traditional solution, and I feel like it's very underestimated as well. So some of the co-benefits of this is, well, the direct benefit is that we are going to recharge our groundwater aquifers, and other solutions, other benefits are that, it's going to contribute to reduced urban heat and improved livability, like I mentioned earlier, and very importantly, carbon sequestration. And, when we are talking about rivers and forests and wetlands, I think all of this come under the broader idea of, nature-based solutions, which is gaining a lot of momentum, because it is a way forward for a more eco-sensitive climate adaptation, that has the potential to be regenerative, and it has a lot of co-benefits. So I think nature-based solutions are a great way to go forward for efficient management of urban flooding. Right. And lastly, a very important solution that we would like to talk about is wastewater treatment, recycling, and reuse. Basically, if there is zero discharge of untreated sewage into the water bodies, that could solve half the problem of the pollution of water bodies. And secondly, wastewater recycling and reuse, again, is something that is extremely underestimated. The potential of recycling and reusing of water is very it is significant in improving the sustainability of the water resources, and it helps us. In fact, when rightly and efficiently managed, it could lead to a more water positive urban environment. So, it is a very crucial step to be considered. And of course, the demand on fresh water will be reduced, and it also will reduce the dependence on groundwater. So yes, I think I literally ran through the presentation, but if I have to conclude something, I have 4 points, and it is something that Raghuji has already mentioned in his presentation, but I would like to quickly represent them. So we have 4 points as a concluding statement. The first is, something that we've learned through our research and study, that an integrated hydrology-based solution to the issue of urban flooding in Chennai is crucial, and it needs to be the way forward, right? Keeping in mind the river basins, keeping in mind the feeder channels, the water bodies, wetlands, up till the smallest drain of the city, it needs to be looked at. So basically an overall approach and a holistic and integrated hydrology based solution is the way, should be the way forward. And secondly, it is so crucial to integrate all of these solutions into the master plan, along with strict enforcement of regulations, laws, and policies. It is extremely crucial for this to happen, because master plan acts as a legal instrument to officiate and implement these solutions efficiently. And thirdly, again, something that Raghuji already mentioned, some of the solutions are expensive. It is going to cost a lot to widen rivers and to make them free flowing. For example, the latest stormwater drainage investment made by the city, they've spent so much into it, and solutions like this will be expensive for the city, but these expenses will be paid back by reducing the costs incurred and during and aftermath of flood. So it is important to make these investments. And lastly, urban flooding is a problem for many cities throughout the country. I think we just had a great example of Gurugram city by Dr. Khushpal, and so it's not just a problem of Chennai or not just a problem of uh, the big metropolises, but also the smaller towns face such extreme situations. And to tackle this within a city level scale wouldn't be efficient. This requires a more national level assistance, especially on the financial and capacity building lines. So yes, that's how I would like to conclude the presentation. Thank you.
You're muted. You're muted.
Raghuji, you're on mute.
So we started with one speaker less, and I sort of was a little lax in allowing a little extra time to speakers. I'm afraid I was a little too lax. So we've exceeded our time. We've got past 8 o'clock. I noticed that we had one question in the open Q&A session, which was answered, and therefore it's disappeared now. And in the chat box, we don't have any questions. So if I may, I would like to take advantage of that by closing the session today without further discussion. I would just like to remind all participants, however, that we are going to have one final webinar right at the end of all the sectoral sessions, where we would sum up our discussions now. And I think those of us who have some questions in mind could keep those in reserve, because we will wind up by summing up our learnings in all these sessions. I just want to make 2 points before I hand it over to Kirtibai to close. One is that I think we've seen in the presentation so far, I wish we had seen the one in Guwahati as well, but I think we have seen that there are common problems in terms of handling extreme rainfall and urban flooding, handling or not handling them in the major cities, etc. And many of these common issues, I think, have been identified. So when we wind up our webinar series, I think we can put them all together and identify these more or less common problems of unplanned development, blockage of natural drainage channels, ignoring of the natural ecosystem-based solutions which were already there, but which we have now disrupted due to unplanned development and over-concretization of the city that we have done, erosion of wetlands and of green spaces. So many of these problems are common. They are also go beyond the issue of climate change. They are problems common to the path of urbanization that we have adopted, and that is what Kirtibai started off by saying. So on that note, I'd like to hand this back now to Kirtibai for his final closing remarks before we close this webinar. Kirtibai.
Thank you, Raghu Saab. Not really closing remarks, on the very rich discussion that took place, but I have a series of ideas, that came to me while I was listening to them, and I want to kind of start from the back side. One is this Bindhu's presentation. It was remarkably rich, very, very good. And I'm extremely, I think, grateful to Bindhu for this effort. Now, Raghu sir, what I was thinking was this, that while we're discussing this, and the problems go on multiplying because hardly anything is happening. And I was just wondering, is possible to kind of act in some simple ways? Like, say, for instance, possible to convert Bindhu's presentation into, say, if there are slides, and make them available to all the schools and colleges, in Chennai in the next month or two, 3, whatever. What I'm trying to say is this, that it's such a wealth of information. It's so well compiled. It not only talks about problem, it talks about broad solutions. It talks about co-benefit. This essentially is a small little guidebooks on the climate change and Chennai. So I would request Raghu Saab that we should examine very seriously this possibility, whether we could take this to schools and colleges. And that must be large. You are essentially talking about almost 1 million young people. If you reach out to them effectively. And I think, not only books, not only presentations, there must be other ways of doing it, but this is my first suggestion. Second suggestion is to Dr. Dahiya. Dahiya Saab, see, tragedy about Gurgaon is this, that we talk about old cities and 100-year-old drainage system. This damn thing is new. It's just happening. And if you really, I think, and therefore, I think, is it possible to put together a small little 20-page, 30-page, 40-page booklet saying how not to plan, how not to develop a city like Gurgaon, how not to do it. And I think it's addressed. The tragedy is this, that the builders don't know this, planners don't know this, politicians don't know this sort of a thing. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying that is it possible how not to create new disasters in form of cities? That is something, and we could say it in a manner where it reaches, where it hits. And I'm just wondering whether that's possible and something we should examine possibility. But
I will try my level best, sir.
yeah, no, we will be partner in this. I'm saying why you shouldn't do alone. We are doing this, and we are very interested in this happening, and we could examine just how to do this. But third point is to friend, Professor Janakarajan. Is he there or is gone?
He's left us.
Okay, well, no, that's fine. Oh, he's not left us, but I think he's gone.
No, I mean, he's left the meeting.
No, I think what I want to suggest, Raghu Saab, and this is something we should communicate to him. There are two parts to this. One is, fact remains that it's not adequate enough to say that nothing is happening.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't believe so, because
I agree with you.
lots of money is being spent. There are consultants and the advisors, and there are programs and the positives. And I think that we need to kind of find out what is happening. It's part of our work. But other thing, which is more critical, which I want to present to Janak Saab, and probably which we should call and talk to him, is this: that is it possible to request city authorities, like say, either jointly together or CMDA, produce a white paper on what is city doing to meet the climate challenge at this stage of preparation. And what I'm trying to kind of say is this, that maybe Janak Saab and we all put together should give a format to CMDA of what kind of white paper. I'm not saying we produce white paper. I'm saying that we suggest and create conditionalities where CMDA produces a white paper. The reason one is talking about white paper is this, that if you're talking about preparing for climate change, it's a longish process. And therefore, the formal organization authorities do not think about it because they say we will really come out and tell people what we have done after we've done it. I'm saying, is it possible to tell them that give us information at phases of your work? What amount of work that is happening at this stage? Because, and I think we should write a formal letter to all the authorities. We should write to, I think, CMD, we write to others, and then suggest a format within which a white paper could happen. And then, of course, it could be translated in Tamil, whatever. And my last point is this. It is possible to launch a campaign or really kind of get organized on this. What I'm saying is this, that preparing for the next flood is preparing for climate change.
Yeah.
And therefore, is it possible for us to get into some kind of action mode where we don't talk about preparing for climate change? It's too big, it's too complex, too difficult, too expensive. Is it possible to say, let us put our heads together, our hearts together, our hands together, and prepare for the next floods? Not only listening to what government is doing, but basically speaking, city prepares its plan. City, I don't mean authorities alone. City prepares plan for the next flood. It may happen tomorrow. It may happen 2 years down the line. It may not happen. Doesn't matter. But how? Because I personally feel that if and of course I think Janakarajan have talked about this, that if we really were to kind of studied our flood response patterns, in the last few years, and made it available, in itself would have been wonderful kind of preparation for meeting the flood, and of course other calamities. So these are a few of my very quick suggestions, and because we are active on this, and Bindhu and Karthik and I think can work on this in terms of taking it to people.
Yeah.
This is a part of our work.
Sure.
I think this wonderful slide presentation that Bindhu made, if it remains in her computer, it doesn't mean much.
Mm.
It does not have to be complete and perfect. It's good enough at this stage and this form. And I personally feel a little bit of refining if necessary. But if you could get prepared and look at the delivery system, we should really invest on that, in terms of how do we take it to people, because taking it to people is what is the
Sure.
major theme of the whole webinar series. And now we have this opportunity in Chennai. Use that in order to take it to people. So those are the kind of few suggestions.
Very good.
Thank you very much to Vaishnavi Ji. Wonderful, I think, to hear you. Very passionate and very, very interesting. Dr. Dahiya Saab, very, very thoughtful, I think, presentation, because you've been saying, and I think this is a tragedy of design, and the tragedy of planning, and tragedy of
Exactly.
why should it happen? It's very hard to know, and I think so. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Bindhu. Thank you, Bindhu, again for this beautiful, beautiful presentation. Raghu Saab, thank you, Bhumaji, and of course everyone else who's around to listen to this and participate in this. We're very grateful to all of you. We're very grateful to this wonderful panel, and we look forward to Vaishnavi Ji. You got to kind of come in with us. It's not INHAF's project, it's city's project, and we need your experience and skill and articulation. A great deal. We also want to know more people through you in terms of how to do this. So please come in and help us.
Happy to.
Thank you all. Thank you all once again. Good night, everybody.
Thank
We'll
you.
be in touch.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch with everyone. Good
Thank
night,
you so much.
Dahiya Saab.
Good night, sir.
Thank you.
It's my honor. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.